Hey everyone. You all had requested some information on polyvagal theory, so I'm really excited to share that with you. So just give me a second here. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about polyvagal theory. Polyvagal theory is super inspiring to me, created by Stephen Porges, who is a professor at Indiana University. To me, I think it's so interesting because more and more as we progress in our understanding of psychology and human biology and the environment and trauma, we're realizing that everything goes together. These things are not separate. Our biology, our physiology, our responses to trauma, and everything that impacts us coalesces to create our ability to function or not. So today we're going to talk a little bit about polyvagal theory. All right. So what is the vagus nerve? The vagus nerve is part of the nervous system, and it's a nerve that runs from the base of the skull at the brainstem down through the lungs, the heart, the diaphragm, and the stomach. And it also goes up to connect to the eyes, throat, nose, and ears. And polyvagal theory was created by Stephen Porges in 1994. And his theory is that the vagus nerve, which has two branches, communicates with the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system has three branches: the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic, and the enteric, which the sympathetic is connected to fight, flight, freeze, fawn, all of those sort of base traumatic responses that people engage in when there is a lion chasing them or a traumatic predator in their vicinity. The parasympathetic is the rest and restore part of the nervous system that allows us to relax, to wind down, and heal. And then we have the enteric, which is the digestion and elimination part of our sympathetic, or part of our autonomic nervous system. So the vagus nerve is the messenger between the brain, the body, and the environment, and it can detect environmental cues. So the vagus works in conjunction with the autonomic nervous system to trigger fight or flight. And so with someone with a traumatic history, they might detect a threat where there is not one. The vagus nerve, it may be extra sensitive. They may be experiencing toxic stress that really impacts their ability to effectively detect risk. And it greatly impacts their life. So you can imagine if every time someone had a panic attack, every single time they saw a man in a red shirt, for instance, if their attacker happened to be a man in a red shirt, that could be very problematic if they're out in a crowd, if they're at work. Seemingly innocuous cues can really trigger that response in somebody. And it can cascade into a whole host of hormonal imbalances, stress responses that then lead to physical health problems as well. So that vagus is kind of, a mediator between what Porges calls like the mammalian brain or the lizard brain. So the lizard brain is that base fight, flight, freeze system, the threat detection system. When you think of a lizard, you think of it doesn't do much other than, run, freeze, hide, eat, sleep, those base functions. But the mammalian system that he describes is connected, friendly, playful, and sort of like a higher level you know, part of the nervous system. So when we're able to access our more mammalian brain, we're more creative, we're flowing, we are laughing, we're happier, but we're also probably functioning on a much deeper cognitive level, and certainly a better physical level, because this impacts digestion and, hormonal regulation, et cetera. So will we go into fight, flight, freeze, or protect, or will we relax and connect? We work best when we can switch easily between these at appropriate times. So obviously we want to be able to do that if we're driving on the road and we need to step on the brake quickly. We need to act quickly. But we don't want to do that when we are in a situation that requires us to communicate and connect and relax. And this is not just a function of, wanting to be more social. It could be a part of our job. So it is imperative that we're able to switch back and forth. Porges describes 3 different states that can be triggered by the vagus that occurs in the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system. The dorsal vagal state, which is an emergency state. It's a physical shutdown with decreased arousal. The sympathetic state, which is high alert. It's high energy, anxiety, motivation, cortisol, etc. And then there's the ventral vagal, which is relaxed, decreased defenses, and highly social. Here is a little figure here that really breaks it down in a great way. So if we're in the dorsal vagal state, which is that emergency state, the body is almost completely shut down. This looks like depression, hopelessness, not getting out of bed, trapped, helpless, dissociating, numb. And it increases fuel storage and insulin activity, endorphins that help numb and raise the pain threshold, and decreases heart rate, blood pressure, temperature, muscle tone, etc. So this is like a catatonic state, or just low energy, deeply depressed. That's the freeze dorsal vagal state. Not a very functional state. That's more of the I can't mentality. Then we have the sympathetic state, which is I can, highly motivated. That's the fight or flight. So you're getting out of the situation or you're raging. So this increases blood pressure, heart rate, fuel availability, adrenaline, cortisol, oxygen regulation, etc., and decreases fuel storage, digestion, salivation, relational ability, and immune response. So this is how people get sick. They might be in that fight or flight state for too long. In a high stress society, this is all too common. When you are running out the door, you're grabbing something for breakfast, you're trying to think through your presentation for the day, you are dealing with a variety of challenges and concerns that may be thrown your way, and any number of stressors. So this is your high stress, cortisol, stress mode all the way. And then we have the ventral vagal state, which is high social engagement. That's the relaxed state, curious, open, compassionate, mindful, present, and grounded. And this state increases digestion, intestinal motility, resistance to infection, immune response, rest and recuperation, and oxytocin. So the feel-good hormone, that cuddle hormone. And it decreases defensive responses. So obviously we want to stay in the social engagement ventral vagal state as much as we possibly can, or we want to get back there as soon as we can. If we are dysregulated, we can experience toxic stress. So Dr. Nadine Burke was the Surgeon General of the state of California, and she did a ton of research on ACEs. She was not the progenitor of the ACE study, but she did a ton of work with children and created a massive clinic to help screen loads of people and help treat children who experience toxic stress. She saw children that were not growing. She saw children that were, behind cognitively. She saw disproportionately misdiagnosed children, children who maybe were diagnosed with ADHD or ODD, who had experienced ACEs. And ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. And I may actually do a whole other little mini lecture on that because that's like a whole other topic. But what she talks about is the experience of toxic stress and how that impacts long-term health. And when I say can lead to health problems, I mean very serious problems, decreasing your longevity significantly with heart problems, diabetes, asthma. In children, it was a lot of asthma, failure to thrive, headaches, mental health problems, the gamut, addiction, etc. And so even without the behavioral changes like increased drinking, smoking, drug use, etc., the individuals were still experiencing health problems as a result of toxic stress. So when this vagus is stimulated over and over again due to trauma, it releases hormones that can trigger toxic stress. And it can even damage DNA. So it can be passed on intergenerationally through telomeres, which I find to be very fascinating. So what we want to do is stay within the window of tolerance. And this figure here talks about how, like, when you're emotionally regulated, you feel cool, calm, connected. You can make decisions calmly without feeling overwhelmed. And when you stay in this window, it allows for better relationship interactions. When you're in fight or flight, you're going to experience that anxiety, rigidness, obsessive compulsive behavior, and addiction. When you're in the hypoaroused state, again, we're going to have that low energy, decreased affect, flat affect, and dissociation. And then, some of the reasons that you might go out of that window could be trauma related. It could be feelings like feeling threatened or unsafe. Trauma triggers rejection, abandonment. And tips to stay in the window include identifying your triggers and working with those, being present, grounding, deep breathing, call a friend, exercise or stretch, and positive affirmation. And we'll talk more about treatment here in just a second. So we want to go from protection to connection. The vagus might tell us that we need to fight, flight, flee the scene, freeze, go into our hole, isolate, stay away from the danger, right? But if we're in that protective state, it leads to all those toxic stress issues and avoidance of triggers, and it can be detrimental long-term to the individual. So what we want to help our clients do is connect. So in our therapeutic sessions, we need to use vocal prosody. So what that means is instead of talking in a monotone, you're going to have a calm, warm demeanor. You want to use gentle voices, particularly with children, if they're in that heightened state. If you can tell someone's in that fight, flight, freeze, or that hypoaroused, just deeply depressed state, you really want your voice to be one that is non-threatening. You're going to use an open stance and posture. We have these ancient signaling devices, hands, that we use to tell people that we're not a threat. We can read body language really quickly, and the vagus nerve is very good at that. That's exactly what the vagus does. Sometimes it misreads a threat when there isn't one, but we can do our part to get on a child's level, to not get to stand too close to that child or person who's traumatized, and to make sure that we have warmth and just an open kind of posturing and stance, and a soft vocal tone, gentle vocal tone, or a warm, energetic tone, possibly with someone who may be experiencing those hypoarousal symptoms. But we want to, kind of find balance, not go over the top if they're really down, but we might bring the energy up a little bit or down based on what the client's presenting. And we want to create trust and relationship, because if we can create trust in the therapeutic bond, then that might be the start of the way out of the hole for an individual who's really struggling. We want to, in general, if we're working on goals related to an overactivated vagus nerve, or even just in ourselves, we have to focus on our physical health. That means getting good sleep, eating well, physical exercise, just general, really, really good self-care overall. Making sure that we are around positive people and that we're, engaging in a non-stressful lifestyle if we can. Or if we are in a high stress situation, we're doing other things to sort of buffer ourselves from those stresses. Mental health care. So obviously talking to someone, encouraging therapy for someone who might be struggling, meditation and mindfulness. Those are big that we could use in the therapeutic bond to help regulate the vagus, and relationships. So encouraging relationships in our treatment plan. This harkens back to my last lecture. So, we can't overstate the importance of healthy relationships. When we have safe, stable relationships in our lives, it improves hormones, immune functioning, and our neurobiology. This is what Dr. Burke talks about. I've heard somewhere that loneliness is like chronic loneliness is like smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So it genuinely takes years off your life. So that's something to think about just in our general lives about, the importance of maybe relationships in our own lives, but also maybe how we treat others. And in a world where we're seemingly more and more disconnected through technology, maybe we can make some efforts to create deeper social bonds for all of our health. So some hyper and hypoarousal ideas and techniques. So remember, hyperarousal is that high energy, cortisol induced, adrenaline pumping, high energy state. And then the hypoarousal is that lower depressive, low energy, tired state. So we can engage for hyperarousal. We can engage in breathing exercises, like maybe lower energy to kind of try to bring the energy down. Exercise is a good one, kind of for both. Hot tea, it has a calming effect, and it just stimulates the senses and kind of brings some mindfulness into a therapeutic moment. Hugs, if that's appropriate. Physical touch can be really helpful to kind of calm someone. And tactile calming strategies. So, we've got our fidget spinners and our Play-Doh and the things that kiddos and people, adults as well, can hold, touch, just to kind of help regulate and maybe even stim a little bit to bring that energy into focus and kind of have a place for it to go. And we also, so for the hypoarousal, that low energy depressive state that looks, just so hard and sad for the individual, we can help them through breathing exercises like a pranayama breathing, which is a higher energy breathing, like that's a more that can bring some energy to the diaphragm, which actually stimulates the vagus nerve. Ice water, we can, wakes us up, also stimulates the vagus. A cold shower. For children, routines can be really helpful, probably for both hyper and hypoarousal. And increased relational check-ins. So making that more focused on the treatment plan. What is your social support system? And, really building that in. And other ideas to stimulate the vagus could include laughter, massage therapy, gargling, because that actually stimulates the vagus nerve in the throat, singing, sound therapy, relationships and support, and eating fiber, because the vagus also is connected to our digestive system, as we mentioned. So that, just kind of goes back into like gut health, eating the right things. Fiber can help keep the digestive system moving, which can increase the health of your nervous system. So those are all things to consider as we incorporate the possibility of polyvagal theory into our work with clients. This was just a really brief introduction. I find it to be fascinating stuff, and I hope you enjoyed it and that you have a great day, and take care of yourself and think about some ways you might be able to implement some of these techniques into your sessions with your clients. The other thing I want to mention is just noticing how this is some sort of similar to what I had talked about in the previous mini lecture about, you know, about movement, relationships, support, psychopharmacology. These things overlap in so many different ways. So it's just something to think about as we're trying to conceptualize our clients in a holistic way. All right, I hope you're doing well today and have a good one.